Hello everybody, it's Kyron here, back again with another Diablo Immortal video. Alright, patch notes abound all over the place, and let's already get into it here. I'm going to do the usual cross comparison between the two sides of the global notes from Blizzard and the NetEase notes from the Chinese servers, of course. They leave a lot of stuff out per usual as far as numerical values in this one. A lot more than usual when it comes to the new essences that are on the way, so let's get into it, mind you. We have various class nerfs and balance adjustments, and also a set nerf. So, yeah. Okay, here we go. Starting out with the global notes, of course, on the left-hand side here first, and then I'll bring up the side-by-side comparison when we get there for the new essences, because this update pretty much is all about the new essences for the most part. Alright, we have a Join the Bout of the Realms, upcoming a whale tournament, basically, PvP. So this might not apply to the vast majority of you out there, but take it for what you will. This is going to be 8v8, of course, and it's going to be server side first until the later brackets, and then they will do cross-server fights. Okay, so you have to clear your server bracket first and then proceed to the cross-server fights. There is a certain timetable on this one, dates and hours of to which these will take place, so keep that in mind if you want to participate. Again, it's mostly going to be a whale fest that will favor anyway. You know, that's just how it is. And the thing is about this one, they probably won't have long queue times. For the whales so who knows if there will be any smurfing involved with resonance and the news. Well, I don't want to say the new. There's one going around right now. I'm just going to touch base on this really quick. Remnants, the Heliquary remnants being removed prior to going into a match to greatly lower your combat rating, to throw you into a different queue bracket for current battlegrounds anyway, is a thing now. That is also another form of smurfing that is starting to make the rounds a little bit more heavily than before, if you're not aware. And then once they go into a match, they will go and re-equip all of their remnants again and boost that combat rating and such back up. So yeah, that's a thing. I just wanted to make note of that if you didn't already know already, to, you know, it is what it is, right? Things are going to be that way. So when it comes to this kind of style of tournament here, I don't know how much they're going to do that, because it's going to be go in with the best that you got at the outset. So I don't think there's really going to be that much to contend with. But anyway, the rewards are fairly substantial here. We had this a long time ago on global. The Chinese servers have this pretty much ongoing a lot more frequently than global gets. So this is like almost a yearly thing, it seems now. But yeah, the rewards are fairly substantial, but of course time-gated stuff that doesn't really last for too long, the 30 days, 90 days, titles and frames. But the legendary crests that you can get, you have to get first place, mind you. You get 180 legendary crests, which seems like a lot, but honestly, this is a whale tournament. That's probably a drop in the bucket for them at this point, especially. They're like, oh, well, that's great and all, but I'm maxed out, so what does it matter? But be that as it may, take it for what you will. Have at it if you so choose. Yeah, so that's that. All right, here we go. On to the legendary affixes. This is the big to-do for both of these patches here. So, all right, as we can see on screen here, I'm going to just put these up on the screen and leave them side by side. Pause where you need to. They're directly across from each other on the screen. Barbarian with Barbarian. Again, the NetEase notes is on the right-hand side, and the global Blizzard notes is on the left. You can read them for what they are here. I'm not going to go into them because that would just take far too long, of course. So let's just give it a 1, 2, 3, and then we'll move on. Next set here, we have the Blood Knight. And in the global, or the Chinese NetEase notes, it is referred to as Berserker, directly across on the right-hand side here. So there you go. Some very interesting changes, a lot of abomination stuff, and a lot of life drain on your person in this case, so I don't know how to really make heads or tails of that one. It sounds like I don't know. too heavy of a high risk, high reward kind of scenario. It doesn't really sound like it's all that much benefit, but take it for what you will on that one. Same thing here again. 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to move on to the next. All right, on to Crusader here. Now they are directly across from each other on the screen here, so go ahead and make note of that now. I'll give you some time. Now I'm doing this also because, as you can see, they don't give numerical values on the global notes. And take case in point here. As you can see in some of these instances, the pants in particular here for Crusader, it says Sacred Chain also disables enemy dash skills for a limited time. So here's what we were talking about when it comes to yet more disabled dash essences coming out down the pipe. As you can see on the other side for the NetEase Chinese notes here, they go into more detail. The clothes. Yeah, no, the pants. There they are at the bottom. They're in a different order, so this is why these are a little bit harder to keep up with. Enemies affected by Divine Chain cannot use movement skills for 2 seconds. This can occur up to once every 6 seconds against the same target. So there you go. So it can be reapplied within 6 seconds. So thankfully they have that put in there. But again, there's values listed here in the Chinese notes, the NetEase notes, that unfortunately Global does not contain whatsoever, which is very, very irritating. They should be putting these in, and they just, for whatever reason, have just flat out refused to do so this time around. So anyway, all right, we're gonna move on. But yeah, like I said, again, we're getting more disable essences across the board here. So big surprise. That, I guess, is another form of them trying to get us to use the new essences for one, out of necessity, and also to, you know, balance the game along the way for what they've already introduced previously, which is a weird way of going about any semblance of balance. As we all know, that is not in their toolbox for either company, honestly. But anyway, moving on. Been here way longer than most of the rest. Let's get the Demon Hunter here. All right, since I spent so much time on the other one, I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit. Okay, Demon Hunter, here you go. On the screen, side-by-side comparison between the two. Read them at your perusal, of course. Pause where you have to on this, and I will give you a count before moving on to the next one in 3, 2, 1. On to the next one. All right, now we're on to Druid. Now, Druid this time around is a special case. Druid is a very special case this time around. We are getting 2 sets of new essences for Druid because, well, they felt like they still didn't boost them enough, so they're rolling out additional essences. So have fun, Druids, because you're gonna have to farm that much more. Now, there is an advantage to this, only in that there's additional Druid affixes. I will scroll them up till they line up, so keep that in mind. First set is at the top here. This is for Inferno 8, as it says on Calamity 8, as it's referred to in the Google translation. But it's Inferno 8. The top set, the newest set for Druid, will be available to be farmed in Inferno 8. So I'll leave that on the screen for a few seconds before moving on to the next one. You can see the values between the two across from each other there. Now, the next set of essences for Druid, the additional set that is, as they list here, is Inferno 6. Inferno 6 and above. So this is where you can actually honestly take advantage of the legacy loyalty points, right? So what's going to happen, of course, as we all know, when the server resets, the server Paragon at 1,000 and everything, and once you can unlock officially Inferno 8 to start doing that, our points are going to be reset. The loyalty points will be reset down to 0 on this update, and of course they will be all sent over into Legacy. So this will be where they will probably be used the most for those of you playing Druid. You can then use those Legacy points and get these newer essences for Inferno 6 unlocked instead of having to farm them up, I guess, right, instead. So I mean, they're still gonna drop, obviously, so your drop pool has now increased, so they are you're gonna get probably a lot more duplicates maybe, and it's gonna be a little bit more harder now to get the mastery ranked out if you don't have it already, but most of you probably already do, those of you that chose to go hard into Druid. All right, I'm gonna go ahead. Again, the top set right now that are side by side compared are the new essences for Inferno 8. Now we're going to go ahead and scroll it down and line up the Inferno 6 set. Alright, I lined up the Inferno 6 set essences on the way for Druid, so there you go. So cross-examination, cross-comparison, all that good stuff. Again, they leave out all the numerical values, and that's why I much more prefer the NetEase notes over the global notes every single time when it comes to this kind of stuff. Yes, the translation's a little hit and miss sometimes with the Google Translate, but even still, sadly enough, it can be better than global notes, which is sad because they do their own translation as well, and they don't really do a good job of it because they don't have an actual in-house translator. They do pretty much the same of us. They either use ChatGPT or what have you on their end. I'm not entirely sure. Whichever it is, it doesn't do a very good job most times. So, anyway. There it is, the Inferno 6 new essences that will be additional essences for Druid. Moving on. On to Monk now. The Marshall Walker, as it's listed on the NetEase notes. So there you go, side by side with both of them again with the listed values. Monk, I will make a quick note on this one. Sounds like very much team play. You will get the most benefit from this synergy setup here for these essences this time around if you are definitely with nearby party members. So instead of going off on your own this time around, this one is you will get the most benefit, and so will your allies, honestly. So this is definitely a support build for sure for Monk, and again, definitely a team support across the board. All the values and abilities will get boosted when you have nearby allies. Okay. Moving on to the next set. In 3, 2, 1. Alright, Necromancer. Let me just break it down really easy for you on this one. The biggest draw to the new essences for Necromancer is an AoE dash disable. Yeah, they get one this time now too. I think they might have had one before, I forget off the top of my head, but now they're getting a AoE effect dash disable. So there you go, take it for what you will. It's the Dark Curse related. I'm not sure how much this will probably get used. It might actually a lot because there are some synergy to this one in the new essences here. I see this might be getting some favored play. So to any necromancers out there, of course, let me know in the comments. Let everybody in the comments in general, let me know what you think about all these things discussed here and what you are excited for in the next few days. And if you're going to swap out some of the meta builds and incorporate some of these once we get them unlocked. And again, in 3, 2, 1, moving on. Next up is Tempest, or Mistblade as it is referred to in the NetEase notes on the right hand side. There are the numeric values, of course, that they leave out in the global notes. And this one, of course, they are going further into the assassin backstab favored kind of abilities and stacking. So take that for what you will. As a Tempest, there is one that actually will turn your opponent, but at the cost of the safe border flowing strike. So I don't really see that one getting much use. So yeah, there's a new essence for flowing strike on the shoulders, but it only increases your critical hit chance for a limited duration, as it says here. And again, just to make note of this, how this works, the NetEase notes actually says what that limited duration is, and it says for 3 seconds after using it. So yeah, and also increases your critical strike chance by 8%, which is always a good thing in boosting critical hit chance, but at the cost of safe borders, I don't really see that getting a lot of play whatsoever. All right, now we're gonna move on to the next one here in 3, 2, 1. And now, of course, on to Wizard, which is Mage on the NetEase notes here, of course. This one sounds very interesting in a sense to me, of course, as a Wizard main, as it should. I was hoping to find something a little bit more fun this time around, a little bit more, and just as viable as the current melee meta. This leans a little bit more in a different direction, of course, for ranged. This one sounds like it could be a lot of fun with all the pieces combined. However, you might be able to mix and match with some of the older ones, but this one in its entirety does sound like pretty fun for a ranged have a go at it. So I'm kind of looking forward to trying this one out, but again, it's going to take some time to acquire all these pieces because our drop pool continues to get that much more muddied, right? I think at this point, and I've said this before, hopefully, I'd like to see them implement this to where we get a point where once you get up to a certain like difficulty, like even like I'd say the hell difficulty to Inferno. Once you get into Inferno, the only essences that you will get to drop in that difficulty will be Inferno essences. That way, the drop pool is a lot smaller and a lot easier to get these because we just have far too many to farm up. We get a lot of the old ones, you know, and we're just like, well, that's immediate scrap. And you know, obviously, unless of course the values are higher, and then you just transfer your essences over anyway. But when hunting new essences, it is that much harder now, and it takes that much longer across the board, especially if you are a class changer. This is far much of a pain point that needs to be addressed. I think they need to, you know, keep them by difficulty. I mean, granted, normal's not that big. Well, you don't get S's until hell difficulty anyway, but that's at least a step in the right direction. And then maybe even segment it further by, like, say, Inferno 1, 2, 3. And then because we have all these legacy loyalty points that are just compiling for the most part, unless, of course, you know, you're a class switcher, and then I see you burning through them a lot more frequently, so that makes sense there. But those of us that don't class change too often, we're just building up a stockpile that we're never going to use. So I'd like to see that change. But anyway, rambled on long enough on that topic. That's, again, a little side note. I'd like to see them implement. Who knows if they'll listen. Those that are in the partner program that might hear of this is my idea. I'm shouting out into the void. So take it for what you will. Apply it. Hopefully somebody will catch ear of this. It'll get, you know, passed along somewhere. At least that's what I'm hoping. But anyway, this one, again, I will say, sounds like a lot of fun. And I do like Meteor. It's kind of in my namesake with Skyrain, of course. You know, one way or the other. And I do like this one. It does sound a lot more fun and ranged. I do appreciate that there is now a little bit of a shift. However, this will still hinge on how effective it is. The melee meta build still is probably going to take precedent because of the shock value that applies and will amp up your damage ultimately. That has been slightly nerfed, which we are going to get into very, very soon here. All right, nothing out of the ordinary with this one here. I don't know why they put this in. We've already seen this before, and it's been ongoing. This is our current event center for the month that we've been dealing with this entire time up to this point. It's very weird that they put this in here, but you get the general idea. It's what we've been doing, and it's just reiterating the ongoing events. Conqueror, of course, is going to be wrapping up on the patch update, and then we're getting Alley of Blood next. So get in, get out. On that one, of course, you know, get your points and basically be done with it, because that one still is not balanced as far as it's concerned. You'll still get, like, if you get on the opposite end of a group of, like, mostly satyrs, of course, you're going to have to deal with that nonsense per usual still. No matter how much they try to say they fix certain things to where that doesn't apply, it still does. Because Alley of Blood is still baseline, and it only comes around every so often whenever they go to switch those servers on. Same thing with Conqueror. Conqueror, you will get server side favor or unfavor, depending on which, and you can feel the desync and the lag that applies. If you know, you know. Yeah, so again, it's because those servers are so old and outdated, they don't update what they've done in those. Which is terrible because it could be way better than what it is initially inherently supposed to be, which is baseline everybody, right? So they should give that a little bit more favor. If anything, if they made this more of a permanent fixture for those that want a, no wailing out necessarily. I mean, they still have some advantages in there, but Conqueror, I know a lot of people are still wanting that to be permanent, and I understand why. But again, the actual server play in there is so desynced that sometimes you will do a massive amount of damage to the enemy, and other times you will barely tickle them, and that's just how it goes. And that's literally server desync. So yeah. And then, of course, that's the total amount of rewards we get for the monthly event center when you finish it. So, again, we've already seen that previously. We've been dealing with it all this time. But here we go. Here's the balance changes. Now, reading this verbatim is very, very odd. And you can hopefully see why if you haven't read it already yourselves, because this is on global. Barbarian, the Terror, Unburdened, Demoralize. The beneficial effects provided by Demoralize will now be disabled when the uncontrollable state is interrupted by another skill. Basically, when you had to pop this, you are unable to control your character, and you're off to the races until you do something else, which is the whole point of it. But now you will lose all those benefits, as it says here. Developers note. And now here's where the translation of their part gets really funky. Instead of breaking the interaction entirely, we are disabling the benefits provided by Terror Unburdened when you have control of your character. So, and then the benefits of damage reduction, immunity to knockback. Here we go. Listen to how this sounds, okay? Just close your eyes for a minute and just listen to this sentence. The benefits of damage reduction, immunity to knockback, and were all meant to counteract that you couldn't control your character. Period. Okay? Open your eyes again. That sounds so weird and so messed up, just trying to read that out loud, and I'm like, what is that? Anyway, but yeah, basically, of course, if you use another skill, that all those extra added benefits of the damage reduction and immunity and all that kind of stuff goes away. So that's a form of balancing it for those immune to control to everything, or immune to everything, and damage reduction for the barbarians. So there's a balance update there. Bit of a nerf. Druid. This one is more of a buff. Not a nerf. This is a balance change, but it's a buff for Druid. People were complaining about the transformations not lasting long enough. Here we go. The transformation can now trigger while under the effects of total loss of control or knockback. Now drains 4 primal power per second, down from 5. So a slight buff. We heard the feedback. Maintaining transformations was one of the more frustrating aspects of the Druid class. So we are lowering the primary power cost to allow you to remain in forms longer. Additionally, we recognize the frustration of not being able to transform while suffering crowd control effects of your transformations being interrupted by them. So you should transform more freely. So there you go for that one. Now on to the biggest one that people are all been like, pitchforks and torches across Reddit abound, which kills me because only in the aspect of, yeah, it needs a slight tweak, which is what we're getting, but it's not in the one that I think a lot of them were hoping for, which is of course, the teleport pants that do the knock-up. Now, there's still no change to that whatsoever, which, honestly, it is what it is. The devs chose not to do that, and here we are, which is still going to get the ire of people on Reddit even further, but this one's very interesting, and I'll make note of as to why this is a kind of a half nerf. Alright, here we go. This is the class adjustment for Wizard as it shows right here in the NetEase notes in the middle. Adjustments to the effects of the Mage legendary item Astrum's coat. Yeah, they're changing the coat of Astrum, and that's it. So here's what it's going to do. On the global side, They say lightning nova projectiles will now disappear when the wizard dies, which is fine because they were continuing on. There are still, I think they might have finally fixed that for most of the classes now, because I remember necromancers had stuff at the time that would go on forever. I remember the big skull used to float around still even after. That was kind of weird. Some other various things of that nature. I know as a wizard that would do like meteor shower, that one would disappear when you would be taken out. The effects would stop. On the one that was like a continual rain. So that was already implemented. So this makes sense. And now let's see, lightning nova projectiles will now prefer staying closer to the wizard. Now we'll prefer staying closer to the wizard. So they are now making you more melee centric than before, so that this stuff is not just spamming, trickling all over the place as we've been dealing with up to this point, which is fine. Because there's already too much spam in this game. Like I said, it's spam immortal. So I'm glad to see that this change is going to happen, honestly. Lightning Nova deals reduced damage to enemies further away from the wizard. So there is that as well. The developer notes, Wild Arcing Lightning Nova provided by the affix was too dominant, especially given the introduction of the new Skybreaker set, which we are going to get into that change nerf in a second. The ranged effects made it difficult for enemies to fight wizard characters. Even if you kill them, the lightning would still persist and still kill you. These changes are aimed to force wizards into more dangerous situations and maintain pressure and keep up the high damage. We will continue to monitor other synergies of this build after these changes have gone live to, of course, adjust where they need to. Yeah. We've heard that before, but usually once they do this one, they don't look back ever again, and then they say, that's good enough, and they move on. But as you can see on the NetEase side of the notes here, this one, like I said, is a kind of nerf and kind of not. It's somewhat of a, I don't want to say a buff either, but it kind of is. If you look into the actual damage values here that they list, before the changes upcoming here, okay, this is what it is currently. Generates a raging lightning bolt that travels between random targets, dealing 40.5 damage to enemies it touches. Leaves a spark when it hits a paralyzed enemy. Okay, so basically when you get the shock effect. Now, this is after the patch. This is the upcoming after the patch effects here. Lightning Nova generates a raging bolt that rapidly travels between random targets. Same thing, dealing 50 damage instead of 40.5, so the damage is increased, dealing 50 damage to enemies it touches. However, the damage will now decrease with the distance from the enemy it hits up to a maximum of 10 damage. So it drops down to 40 the further away you are. So it goes back to the baseline value that it's at currently at 40.5. So the further away you are, it'll deal less damage, but when you're up close, it's going to be doing 10 damage more in these values listed here. So this one's weird. People might not realize this one. They might think, oh, yay. If you're just reading the global notes, you'd be like, oh, finally, they're getting a nerf. But I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, about that. You might want to look into that a little bit closer. Yeah, again, this is why I prefer the NetEase notes over the global notes, because boy howdy do they just leave out a bunch of stuff. So there you go. I mean, it still will apply the further out you are, and of course the bolts will prefer to stay within closer targets. So take that for what you will still, and basically you still have to be as melee centric as possible with that meta build. Okay, there you go. And speaking of the Skybreakers set here, we got the two-piece set bonus, getting a slight adjustment to it. This is a slight nerf to the set. As you can see on the global notes, it says, if an enemy suffers from this effect again from the 2-set bonus within the 6-second cooldown, the duration will be reduced of the effect. Okay, multiple characters running this set effect lead to 100% uptime, providing excess value to other players. So to counter this, the effect will now have its own diminishing returns within the 6-second window. What is that? They didn't list it anywhere. Well, we go to the, of course, across the board here onto the other side of the NetEase notes, as you can see here, and it says, let's see, the effect of the set itself in its entirety. paralyzing nearby enemies for 3 seconds and dealing 12 damage per second. Lightning Pulse can be triggered. This is before. This is what it's doing currently until the update. The Lightning Pulse can be triggered no more than once every 6 seconds. After the update, pretty much all that's the same. However, the only thing here that's different is paralyzing nearby enemies for 3 seconds. The duration decreases by 70%. So there is the actual numerical value. Decreases by 70% if the same target gets hit with it again within 6 seconds. So, and then it cannot be triggered more than once every 6 seconds anyway. However, the duration will be greatly diminished. So yeah, 70% is the key thing to take away from this. Again, they don't list it in global notes per usual. And finally, rounding things out here, I know it's been long, I'm sorry, but I hope you appreciate the in-depth description and discussion here across the board with everything. I tried to be, you know, I could summarize it up a bit shorter, I suppose, but, you know, I like to go into more in-depth when it comes to dealing with certain things in game. A lot of stuff gets left to the wayside, and then people are left still trying to figure this stuff out for a good while until the next update, and they're like, oh, I didn't know it did this, I didn't know it did that. Well, now you kind of do, and see why I'm really upset with global notes. This one's kind of weird. You can just see what your set pieces are in a different format for the UI update, whatever. AFK farming damage is back again, so there you go. For those people that were, you know, again, pitchforks and torches over AFK farmers, well, it's being re-added in. The auto attack feature that I think the Chinese servers, however, gets, they say that will not affect, so keep that in mind too. They get it, global servers do not, so yeah. But they can still AFK farm as long as they have that enabled and activated anyway. Blood Knight transformation skill remapping. Blood Knights that are out there, rejoice in this one. They did it for Druid, so it only makes sense that they finally did it for Blood Knight now too. So you can now remap your skills, which is great. I don't see why they didn't do that when they introduced Druid, honestly, immediately, because that felt like very one-sided. So now Blood Knight can do the same with their skills. So honestly, that is a very nice thing to see. I appreciate that. Even though I don't play Blood Knight, I still appreciate the fact that they did that. Familiar swap button change from your bonded to your companion slot. Whatever. And there's the loyalty points for our legendaries and whatever else. Yeah, we're getting season challenge rift change coming soon. So that means levels 50 or 530 through 550 have their combat rating lowered, so we can push a little further. Those of us who are not whales. So that's cool. Make use of that. Get some more of your materials in from running those a little bit further and push a little further in. And now the top 3 on the leaderboard will now appear instead of just the top 1. The top 1 supposedly gets a frame, of which they don't make mention of in the global notes at all. But it was mentioned in the Chinese note, the NetEase notes. So there you go. Bug fixes, of course, from global is always aha! Funny. And this one here is weird. Damage changes to Inferno 1 through Inferno 6. It's getting a 20% damage reduction from all mobs in open world, hidden layers, Heliquary bosses even, which is crazy, and normal dungeons. I don't know why. I guess there was a lot of newer players crying perhaps about this. I don't know. It seems very, very weird. Those of us who have played the game forever, we've come through all of this stuff, and we didn't even bat an eye over it. So I don't know why. This is a very, very odd change to me, but nonetheless, I guess newer players rejoice. Aha! Until you get to Inferno 7 and above, and then you're right back to, you know, the nastiness, so to speak, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, wrapping things up here. Rambled on far long enough, as per usual. I am sorry. But nonetheless, those of you who hung in the entire time, or if you've skipped around, and here is the outro, okay? Hi, how you doing? Thank you very much for, I guess, making it to these various points in the video. I do, again, hope that you appreciate the cross-examination whenever I do these kind of patch updates. I try to make it different. I try to make it a lot more insightful when it comes to just a usual, you know, copy-paste patch notes comparison nonsense. It is what it is. I know that you've probably already seen this at length in the other ones that are available out there, but still nonetheless. Anyway, do the usual things, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff for the help the channel out. And the algorithm, of course, for YouTube is a nasty place with all its changes that it's had made recently. Again, for a lot of us across the board, it's very weird. If you haven't noticed already, you should be able to tell by your homepage. Things were weird for a very long time, for me anyway, and I'm like, what is all this garbage? What happened to the algorithm? They definitely, you know, they just injected, they're trying to mess with AI and all this other kind of nonsense and combat it, but yet at the same time they're also going further into it. It's a mess. They don't know. Yeah, anyway, that's another ball of wax. Anyway, until next time, everybody, stay safe out there in the real world, and far as always, take care of yourselves as best you can, one day at a time. It's all we can do. It's the best we can do. Believe me. I've been having to unfortunately deal with a lot of stuff, first and foremost in real life here, that has complicated a lot of things again. So forgive my absence in the continual videos here. So I'm gonna try to do as best I can as always. So anyway, until next time, everybody, see ya.